Hello again to the latest hot off the press special edition of Vinylology, where we attempt the massive feat of discussing the top 3,000 albums of all time. If you love the 80s, this episode is for you, and also includes an album suitable for this time of the year. Also, we check out 2 record stores in Salt Lake City, Utah. So put on your members only jacket, your neon shoelaces, and strap into your sleigh. Look What the Cat Dragged In is the debut studio album by American glam metal band Poison, released in 1986 through Enigma Records. Though not successful at first, it steadily built momentum and peaked at number 3 on the US Billboard 200 chart in 1987. Poison, initially named Paris and then later Laser, formed in 1983 in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and consisted of lead vocalist Bret Michaels, guitarist Matt Smith, bassist Bobby Dahl, and drummer Ricky Rocket. The band initially formed a strong local following in Pennsylvania, but saw little opportunity of larger success there, so they moved to Los Angeles. Based in Los Angeles, Poison's stage show began earning them considerable attention in the West Hollywood Sunset Strip club circuit. The band's manager, Vicky Hamilton, who previously represented the band Stryper and who would go on to discover Guns N' Roses, negotiated a deal with the influential club, the Troubadour, which would provide the band with a regular gig and allow them to further develop their image and stage show. Shortly thereafter, they recorded demos for Atlantic Records, but the label passed on the band. Getting frustrated with the lack of success, guitarist Smith left the group. The band then auditioned several guitarists in Los Angeles and eventually narrowed the field down to 2 candidates, Slash and C.C. DeVille. C.C. DeVille was chosen over Slash, even though they didn't care for his brash New York personality, because the band was hoping to find an East Coast guitarist, and DeVille brought with him a primitive early version of a song from his previous group, the Screaming Memes, entitled Talk Dirty to Me, which the band saw hit signal potential in. Unable to secure a major label recording contract, Poison signed with the small label Enigma Records in 1986 for approximately $30,000. Fraction of the hundreds of thousands of dollars many similar acts were receiving from major labels at the time. The album Look What the Cat Dragged In was then recorded in 12 days for a cost of $23,000, part of which was funded from the pockets of the band members and their families and was described by the band as being a glorified demo. The album was initially expected to produce only one single, Cry Tough. However, the album became a surprise success, eventually selling over 3 million copies in the United States, and subsequently spawned 3 charting hits, Talk Dirty to Me, I Want Action, and I Won't Forget You, and the record became the best-selling album in Enigma's history. I have a 2017 Friday Music reissue pressed on 180 gram purple translucent vinyl with a really nice gatefold cover. The purple color is extremely dark. You have to look really close to see the purple color. At first glance, you probably can't even notice the purple, but as you can see, I'm showing light through it. It looks pretty nice, actually. This shouldn't be too hard to find on Friday Music's website. I believe they have reissued this a few times, if I'm not mistaken. There's also lots of pressings from the 1980s. I mean, this is not too hard of an album to find. This album is honestly kind of dumb and deserves some ridicule, but it's still a good time. I remember when I was 15 and I saw the album cover for the first time in a record bar at Eastland Mall in Charlotte, North Carolina, and seriously thought it was women on the cover. 2 guys named Eric Tucker and Rick Green that worked in the store were also in a local band called Helpless Dancer, and I overheard them talking about how great the album was, so I bought this on the spot on cassette. By the way, Eric went on to be the vocalist in a really great local Charlotte band named God's Water during the early 1990s. The intro music for Vinylology is one of God's Water songs. Here's their Skin CD, by the way. These items are so rare that they are not currently on Discogs. Another memory about this album that I have is that there was a guy that lived across the street from my house that played drums in his garage. And one day he literally played this album all day, over and over again, while he laid out on his front lawn getting a suntan. Ah, the 80s. Anyway, the best songs are Cry Tough, I Want Action, I Won't Forget You, and Talk Dirty to Me. I give this a personal score of 7, and this is Poison's only entry on the list. One last thing about Poison. If you are old enough, do you remember the CD Monster Ballads? It was heavily promoted on television commercials back around the years 1999 to 2000. I have the original CD version that includes Poison's song Something to Believe In from their 1990 Flesh and Blood album. Long live hair metal! Farstukker is the fourth studio album from the Belgian electronic band Lords of Acid, released in 2001. So far, the band has released 17 records that have met both critical and popular praise, but they generally remain a cult band of international standing. Farstukker marks the band's full transition from the techno sound of their earlier works to a more industrial music sound, with the band ambitiously using more live instruments. There is still a good amount of programming work evident throughout, but is used primarily to embellish rather than drive the tracks. The end result is mostly a crossover mix of rock and techno, but is still very diverse, drawing samples, sounds, and influence from everywhere. Lyrically, Farstukker maintains the band's trademark themes of promiscuous sex, marijuana use, and hedonism. This is the first Lords of Acid album to be released following the departure of founding vocalist Jade For You, and the first studio release featuring new vocalist Deb Ostrega. Ostrega had previously sung with the band on 2 tours, and she fits in well, leading convincing vocals that work nicely to seduce during both slow and fast moments. When Ostrega takes the lead, catchy and playful hooks reveal themselves and swirl around impressive production work. The title is a spoonerism of the word starfucker. A spoonerism is a word or phrase where letters are rearranged to make a new word or phrase. In this case, starfucker had its letters rearranged to make the new word farstukker. Starfucker was the original name of the Rolling Stones song Star Star on Goathead Soup, but you might also recognize it from the 9 Inch Nails song Starfuckers Incorporated on their album The Fragile. Farstukker peaked at number 160 on the US Billboard 200 chart. Like their other prior studio albums, Farstukker was re-released in 2002 in a stripped version with all vocals removed. I have the 2017 2LP repressing, which is advertised as a special remastered band edition, and has a slightly different cover than the original. Like Lust, which has already appeared on the list, this was limited to only 500 copies. However, I have seen this in record stores a few times throughout the country. I've never seen Lust ever, but this one I have seen, I think, 2 or 3 times in the past 12 months. But 500 copies is basically, obviously, not many, so you might, if you're interested in this, you should probably get it sooner than later because it's just going to be harder and harder to find. This remastered version also has some B-sides and some remastered singles. Just like the rest of their discography, this album is a super sexualized, humorous, electronic, almost industrial party. For example, check out the images from the CD version of Farstukker, as well as another one of their releases, Our Little Secret. Many of the songs are total earworms and never gets boring, with my favorites being Screwed by You, Lover Boy, Lover Girl, Lucy's Fucking Sky, Feed My Hungry Soul, Kiss Eternal, and a surprising Europop sounding song, I Like It, which sounds like it would have been a huge hit song if it was done by a more toned down group in the 1980s. I realize that not too many have heard this, but if you like electronic or dance music at all, and I guess you aren't too prudish, give it a listen. But be warned, this is most likely the most graphic and offensive album on this list, with lots of moans, bad words, and drug inferences throughout. The graphic content is done in a more of a jokey, comical way, but it's still there, almost like the soundtrack to debauchery. My score is a 7.5, and this is the final Lords of Acid album on the list.
fathers locked inside that masqueraded as his bride. I'm not like you better if we slept together. I'm not like you better if we slept together. I'm not like you better if we slept together. But there's something in your eyes that says maybe. That's never say never. Some for the courthouse with the windburned skin. That man could give a fuck about the grin on your face as you walk by. Randy should go. He's sleeping on papers while he'd be warm in your coat. I'm not like you better if we slept together. I'm not like you better if we slept together. I'm not like you better if we slept together. But there's something in your eyes that says maybe. That's never say never.
Benefactor is the second studio album by American new wave band Romeo Void, released in 1982. The album represented the pinnacle for the band, where they got the most support and production from their label, but was still lacking, with the lack of support eventually demoralizing the band. The album features singer Deborah Ayal's moody voice and daring subject matter, covering topics such as abortion, poverty, depression, and sexual domination, which was light years ahead of its time. The bass-heavy music, featuring wonderful saxophone breaks and often dance beats, is a hybrid of new wave and post-punk, clearly influenced by bands such as X-Ray Specs, The Waitresses, and maybe even a little bit of Blondie. The only single release was the lead track Never Say Never, which is their most well-known song. The song was a favorite on early MTV, featuring a black and white music video that spoofs Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless. The song is driven by a throbbing, funky bass line, punctuated by jagged guitar and saxophone, and has an infectious chorus where Ayal sings, "I might like you better if we slept together," a sort of dismissive sexual suggestion that ups the ante decades before Carly Rae Jepsen did it with her 2011 song Call Me Maybe. The song was featured in movies such as the 1984 film Reckless, the 2004 film Dodgeball, and the 2013 film The Wolf of Wall Street. Two notable covers of the song were done, one in 2000 by Queens of the Stone Age as a bonus track on their album Rated R, and their feel-good hit of the summer single. This same version was also featured on the 2004 soundtrack album of The Punisher. Also in 2009, the band Julian K covered Never Say Never on their debut album Death to Analog. The album version of the song features a shorter, clean edit suitable for radio broadcast, with the original being a longer, extended version that was released on the Never Say Never EP, recorded a year prior and produced by the Cars' Rick Ocasek. The longer version is uncensored, where Ayal drops the F-bomb, and this just adds more to the savagery of the song. This longer version was also my first exposure to the band via this 1980 CD compilation. The Never Say Never EP also has 3 additional songs that are not available on the album, adding a total of another 20 minutes of music, and charted on its own in the United States and New Zealand. The most recent CD re-release of Benefactor includes the 4 songs from the EP, but it was never released this way on vinyl. After releasing their next album, Instincts, which has already appeared on Vinylology, the band was sold to label Columbia Records, who was not interested in marketing the band. Therefore, Romeo Void parted ways in 1985, with Ayal occasionally releasing solo albums thereafter, as well as returning to her first love as an artist and art instructor, especially inspiring young Native American artists. In 2019, Ayal was nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award at the 19th Annual Native American Music Awards. The only vinyl pressings available are the original 1982 pressings, and I have the Columbia Records Pittman press, which sounds fantastic. I see this album and the Never Say Never EP all the time in record stores throughout the country, and it's usually really inexpensive, so you shouldn't really have a hard time getting this. I cannot recommend enough the track Never Say Never. It is a perfect blend of attitude and catchiness that I never get tired of. Besides that, the songs Flash Flood, Chinatown, and the amazing Undercover Kept are all great. The songs on the EP are also wonderful, so again, I recommend hunting that down too. This band is a great group of musicians and really sounded tight. My score is a 7.5, and I wholeheartedly recommend this. This is the final Romeo Void album on Vinylology. It's kind of amazing that 2 of their 3 albums are on the list, which really says something.
I had a way then, losing it all on my own. I had a heart then, but the queen has been overthrown. Oh, when I'm not sleeping now, the dark is too hard to beat, and I'm not keeping up the strength I need to push me. You show the lights that stop me turn to stone. Oh, I shine it when I'm alone, and so I tell myself that I'll be strong and dreaming when they're gone. 'Cause they're gone, gone, gone.
Lights is a debut studio album by British performer Ellie Goulding, first released in early 2010 as Lights, then later released in November of the same year as Bright Lights with additional material, and then again 10 years later as Lights 10 with even more songs. Collaborating with many different producers on the album, Lights debuted atop the UK Albums Chart and also charted highly in both the United States and in Canada. Goulding studied at the University of Kent, but dropped out after 2 years in order to pursue her musical career after being noticed in a university talent contest. After signing to Polydor Records in 2009, Goulding released her debut EP and released Lights the following year. The album consisted of songs that are all written on a guitar over a period of about 2 years, with many of them chronicling romantic victories and failures. The first song she ever wrote, Wish I Stayed, is featured on the album, being reminiscent of the suburban pop of a band like the Sundays. 4 singles were released from the original album: Under the Sheets, Starry-Eyed, Guns and Horses, and The Rider. The Bright Lights reissue spawned 2 more singles: a cover of Elton John's Your Song, which was featured in a 2010 John Lewis UK store Christmas advertisement, and Lights, originally an iTunes bonus track, which peaked at number 2 on the US Billboard Hot 100, becoming Goulding's highest charting single to date. Lights received generally positive reviews from music critics, which praised the lush electro dance production and the infectious sparkling pop with its folky backbone but still having an electronic edge. There were also a lot of compliments over the songwriting itself. In an amazing feat, Goulding became the second artist ever to top the BBC's annual Sound of 2010 poll and also win the Critics' Choice Award at the Brit Awards in the same year. My vinyl copy is the double LP 2020 Record Store Days Lights 10 reissue celebrating the album's 10-year anniversary. It includes everything that is on Bright Lights, but also adds 6 remixes that were previously released on the 2010 EP Run Into the Light, which is an iTunes exclusive. Unlike many other albums that remix songs and make them worse, the ones on Lights 10 are not bad at all. I had a hell of a time finding this for Record Store Day in the United States, so I eventually had to order this online. However, it is still fairly easy to acquire, online. This was pressed on recycled vinyl to reduce environmental impact, and the jacket has also been completely recycled, with the hype sticker stuck directly on the jacket. Instead of using shrink wrap, it used a warning sticker to keep the records inside that you had to carefully peel off, so the album is environmentally friendly as you can get. Sidebar: vinyl records are manufactured from polyvinyl chloride, or PVC for short. Newly made PVC is made from extracting oil from the ground, and the black color of vinyl itself also comes from carbon, which is also derived from fossil fuels. So recycling vinyl really is a good environmentally friendly thing to do. As typical for modern dance pop albums, the dynamic range is not good. As you can tell by now, what is being considered for Vinylology is the Bright Lights re-release, since quite frankly, some of the album's best songs were added with the reissue. This is a glorious, spacey dance pop. It sounds very modern and the production is very crisp. Golding has an extraordinary high vibrato, which is often multi-tracked here to magical effect on her songs of angst and romance. Contrary to many of the singles that were released, my favorite songs are Guns and Horses, This Love, Human, Little Dreams, The Pumping Disco of Animal, and The Monster Smash Lights. The Elton John cover, Your Song, is also really nice and tender, but sticks too close to the original in my opinion. I give this a 7.5, and this is Ellie Goulding's only album on the list. Chicago 17 is the 14th studio album by American band Chicago, released in 1984. It was the group's second release to be produced by David Foster, and their last with founding bassist and vocalist Peter Cetera. In 1985, the album received 3 Grammy awards and was a major success at the time. The band's previous album, Chicago 16, finally gave Chicago a big hit after a long drought, thanks in large part to new producer David Foster, who steered the jazz rock veterans toward a more streamlined, crispy produced pop direction. Given that success, the group teamed with Foster again for Chicago 17. Foster took even more creative control, steering the group further down the adult contemporary road and putting Peter Cetera towards the front of the group. This was done while pushing the horn sound towards the background, which is easy not to notice as they now meld seamlessly with the synthesizers that are now the primary instruments. This new sound did not sit well with many longtime fans, and it caused some tension within the group, especially with keyboardist Robert Lamb and with Cetera. However, many agree that this particular album is a master class in musical production, with many imitators never quite equaling Foster's work on this album. 4 singles were released, all of which peaked in the top 20 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. The success of the singles propelled Chicago 17 to sell over 6 million copies in the United States, and the album remains the biggest selling album in the band's history. 2 of the biggest hits were the slick and dramatic power ballads, Hard Habit to Break and You're the Inspiration, and helped set the sound for adult contemporary pop for other artists for the rest of the decade, especially for hair metal bands like Poison and Bon Jovi. You're the Inspiration was originally written for country artist Kenny Rogers, who ended up turning the track down. The first single was the lead track Stay the Night, a rock song with a more hard-hitting drum beat, as recorded by noted session drummer and Toto band member Jeff Porcaro, even though his contributions were uncredited on the album. This song is also remembered for its music video, with Cetera chasing a hard-to-get lady, played by Ingrid Anderson, featuring some dramatic car chases. As was done on the majority of the albums up to that time, the traditional Chicago logo is the main feature of the album cover. The number 17 was in Arabic numerals for this album, rather than the Roman numerals used for the group for all of their previous releases. I have a 1984 original Specialty Records pressing, and as you can see, the dynamic score is excellent. There are so many copies of this album out there, you should have absolutely no problem getting a clean used copy of this. Maybe even in dollar record store bins. If you want a newer reissue, Friday Music did one in 2015, which was also remastered. Again, I'm fairly confident you're better off just finding a pressing from 1984. If you like Chicago 17, you most surely will like the album before it, Chicago 16. It features the same sort of soft rock, David Foster produced material. This also has 2 huge ballads on it as well, the songs Hard to Say I'm Sorry and Love Me Tomorrow. Unfortunately for Chicago, I guess, Chicago 16 didn't quite make the cut for Vinylology, but again, you would like it if you like Chicago 17. This album definitely divides fans, which I totally understand, but no one can deny it is extremely well done and listenable pop with slick, shiny, almost amazing production. My favorites are basically the singles, the songs Stay the Night, Hard Habit to Break, You're the Inspiration, and Along Comes a Woman, as well as the song Remember the Feeling. Hard Habit to Break especially is a pop masterpiece, combining the tenor voice of Cetera with the baritone by keyboardist Bill Champlin. My personal grade is a 7, and here are the Chicago albums on the list so far. Second Coming is the second and final studio album by English rock band The Stone Roses, released through Geffen Records in late 1994 in the UK and in early 1995 in the US. It went platinum in the UK, reaching number 4 on the UK albums chart and selling over 1 million copies worldwide. The album was dedicated to Philip Hall, the band's publicist, who died of cancer in 1993. The second album by the Manchester four-piece, it was delayed for over 5 years, mainly due to the band dealing with legal filings in order to break their previous 8-album recording contract, being unhappy with their earnings. Notoriously press-shy, the delay generated an extremely high expectation for the new album among fans, and when the album was finally released, the band had to contend with a changed musical environment, having to compete with a new generation of Britpop bands. 3 singles were released, with the first being Love Spreads, a bluesy rock number recorded in D minor, reaching number 2 on the UK singles chart, the highest peak for any song by the band, as well as charting in the United States, Canada, Ireland, and Sweden. Its lyrics are a telling of the Passion of Christ, reinterpreting Jesus as a black woman, being inspired by the Rosalind Miles 1988 book, The Women's History of the World. There were 2 music videos made, an original UK version consisting mostly of home video footage, and a second video for American audiences that was more professionally done. The song was featured in the music video game Guitar Hero World Tour and was also a downloadable song in the Rock Band video game series. 10 Story Love Song was a second single, which was followed by the third and final single, Begging You, a loud track with heavy drum beats, soaring guitars with a deep, heavy repeated riff, pulsing bass, and apocalyptic lyrics loosely based on material from Public Enemy's album Fear of a Black Planet, and containing many references to Aesop's fables. The song was inspired by Manchester's 1990s club scene, where club goers were often befueled by too many drugs, often looking for more. Reviews for the album was very mixed, with some calling the songs bloated and often overly long, but then many others praising John Squire's guitar work, which had evolved from the alternative jangle pop of the first album to a more riff-crazy frenzy that reminded many of guitar licks of someone like Jimmy Page. Most agreed that the album was a disappointment from their first release. After the album release and a supporting tour in which some band members quit and guitarist John Squire broke his collarbone during a biking accident, the band broke up officially in 1996 for almost 15 years. After releasing a couple of singles in 2016, the band broke up again the following year, this time supposedly for good. I have the most recent repressing, pressed by MPO, a French pressing plant, on 2 LPs with a gatefold jacket around the year 2019. MPO does not have the best reputation regarding vinyl quality control, with records often having non-fill scuffs, non-centered holes, and the like, but my copy is absolutely fine. This is also a back to black release, so it includes a voucher to download an MP3 version of the album. This album is at times really good and other times a little dull. It can never live up to the expectations upon release as a result of their success of their first album, but I still think this could have been a little bit better. There is some great music, however, with my favorite songs being the longer, more instrumental numbers, Breaking into Heaven, with its extended intro of brooding atmospherics, Driving South, Daylight, Begging You, Tears, and of course Love Spreads, which is the very last song on the album and is fantastic and clearly the best song. The guitar playing by Squire is very inspired and hot in the mix, and the lyrics are often very dark and interesting. Anyway, I give this a 7, a very solid release. Mirage is the 13th studio album by British-American rock band Fleetwood Mac, released in 1982 by Warner Brothers Records. The album's soft rock sound stood in stark contrast to its more experimental predecessor, 1979's Tusk, returning the group to the top of the US Billboard charts for the first time since their 1977 album Rumours, spending a total of 18 weeks in the US top 10 and also reaching number 5 in the UK and number 2 in Australia. Fleetwood Mac formed in London in 1967 by guitarist Peter Green, drummer Mick Fleetwood, and guitarist Jeremy Spencer, before bassist John McVie joined the lineup for their self-titled debut album. Keyboardist and vocalist Christine Perfect, who contributed as a session musician from the second album, married McVie and taking on his last name, and joined in 1970. Primarily a British blues band at first, Fleetwood Mac had modest initial success, but was always plagued by legendary internal strife and band lineup changes. In late 1974, American folk rock duo Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joined the group, and the most well-known and popular lineup of the group was formed. The addition of Buckingham and Nicks gave the band a more pop rock sound, and their next 3 albums would achieve massive success, all the while dealing with personal relationship breakups and lots of drama. These 3 albums were followed by a short hiatus, during which Stevie Nicks, Mick Fleetwood, and Lindsey Buckingham had each commenced a solo career, and the band eventually reconvened to record Mirage as a group in France in 1982. Mirage yielded several hit singles: Hold Me, Gypsy, Love in Store, Oh Diane, and Can't Go Back. The first single and biggest smash, Hold Me, was a Christine McVie song and became one of Fleetwood Mac's biggest hits in the United States, peaking at number 4 for a then record 7 consecutive weeks in 1982, but failed to chart in the United Kingdom despite respectable good publicity. The Stevie Nicks composition Gypsy was the second single and the second biggest hit from the album, and was written by Nicks around 1979, being inspired by Nicks' nostalgia for her life before Fleetwood Mac. Back then, Nicks had been in a romantic relationship with Buckingham, and the duo performed together as Buckingham Nicks. During this time, the pair barely got by with their meager earnings. After achieving success, she would occasionally feel the need to get back to her roots before she had reached financial stability, back to the days when she had no wealth, back to herself as a poor gypsy. Initially considered for Nicks' solo album Belladonna, Nicks held it for Fleetwood Mac to perform after the song became even more significant for the singer when Nicks' best friend, Robin Snyder Anderson, died of leukemia in 1982. Anderson was Nicks' vocal coach and close confidant, and the two had known each other since they were teenagers. The night before Belladonna was released, Nicks received a terrifying call from Snyder saying that she would only live for another 3 months, and that Snyder had intentionally gotten pregnant so as to leave her husband, Kim Anderson, with something after she had left the world. After the baby was born 3 months prematurely, Snyder died 3 days later, giving birth to a son named Matthew. As Snyder was dying, Nicks dedicated the song Gypsy to her, and shortly thereafter, out of a mutual grief, Nicks married Kim Anderson in 1983. However, 3 months later, Nicks filed for divorce after she had received a sign from Snyder from beyond the grave, telling her to leave Anderson, and Nicks found it extremely difficult to sing the song in concert. The video shoots for Hold Me and Gypsy were extremely difficult to complete, with Gypsy being the highest budget music video ever produced at the time and was the very first world premiere video on MTV in 1982. Interpersonal strife amongst the band members complicated the shoots, and most scenes featured only 1 or 2 band members at a time, with the entire band never seen together all at once. Nicks and Buckingham's relationship was especially tenuous. While John McVie was often drunk, Christine McVie was irritated with the rest of the band, and the band was all angry with Mick Fleetwood, was starting an affair with Nicks' best friend, Sarah Recor, whom Fleetwood later married. Also, Nicks had just gone into drug rehab, which even more complicated the filming as she was going through cocaine dependency at the time. Nicks' song Straight Back was written in the winter of 1981 and referred to her separation from her then lover, producer Jimmy Iovine, and the turmoil she experienced having to leave her newly established and highly successful solo career to rejoin the band for Mirage. Christine McVie's composition Only Over You was credited to Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys, who Christine had recently ended her relationship with, and who would die by drowning the following year. My vinyl copy is a 2019 European pressing on violet colored wax. You can get this really inexpensively, and it isn't hard to find at all, and even original pressings are fairly plentiful. The sound is nice and warm and is definitely a step up from CD and streaming services, Another example where the vinyl releases really shines. I also have the alternative Mirage version of the album, which originally came out on 2017 Record Store Day on Black Vinyl and was later collected with the other Fleetwood Mac alternative albums as a box set on the 2022 Record Store Black Friday event, this time on clear vinyl, which is what I have. It is quite amazing how good these early versions and different takes of all these songs are, and I highly recommend this if you like this album. I have to first off make a big disclaimer right away. Personally speaking, I always thought that the song Gypsy was absolutely perfect in every way. I love everything about the song, from the harmonies, instrumentation, Stevie's vocals, Lindsay's background vocals, and also the really nice finger-picking guitar work by Lindsay at the end. Besides that, my personal favorites are Love in Store, Hold Me, Empire State, Only Over You, and Straight Back. Nice, enjoyable listen throughout, just not on the same par as some of their other works. As you can only imagine, there is something not quite right with the group behind the scenes, though I didn't realize how bad it was until I researched this album in detail. Mirage gets bashed by some people, and I somewhat sorta understand, but give it a few listens. It is really good. I give this a 7.5, but almost even gave it an 8. It was very close. Also, rest in peace to Christine McVie, who had just recently passed away at the age of 79. She is clearly the glue that held this volatile group together for so long and left us with so many wonderful songs. Mordecai is the third studio album by American musical trio Khruangbin. The album was released on the Dead Oceans and Nighttime Stories labels. With a band name that translates to airplane in Thai, the band is comprised of Laura Lee on bass, Mark Spear on guitar, and Donald DJ Johnson Jr. on drums, formed after the members played in a gospel band together at St. John's United Methodist Church in downtown Houston, Texas, the same church that Beyonce and Solange frequent. The band members were shy of the spotlight, wearing wigs at shows and press shoots, and never repeated stage outfits. Details of the recording studio, which was an old barn northwest of Houston, added to their sense of mystery. Khruangbin's musical genre is a hotly debated topic, with even the band members themselves challenging the convention of genres, refusing to be pigeonholed into one particular label. Mostly instrumental, the band is known for blending global musical influences such as classic soul, dub, rock, and psychedelia. Their first two albums have heavy influences of Thai music in the 1960s, as well as music from Spain and the Middle East. Mordecai is underscored with memories and love for their home city of Houston, with the trio continuing on their globe-trotting pursuits. But something is apparently different this time right from the beginning, with the dreamy, suave, funky opening track First Class, and this time there are vocals, with all three members contributing. The addition of vocals suggests that the band have a bigger interest in songcraft, with bassist Lee usually taking command, with her long, stretched out phrases adding to the overall kaleidoscopic groove. However, the vocals do not dominate the sound, carefully mixed to merely assist the guitar or percussion, in creating a fuller sonic experience for the listener. The words, all from Lee's journal written during a hike that she had taken with a friend named Mordecai, adds a whole new dimension to Khruangbin's world, populating the former instrumental landscapes. The music alone already invoked plenty of feeling, but now with lyrics, those feelings are reinforced, whether they are tender, playful, or reflective. and offer a rich, meditative escape from the world. The addition of vocals and having less guitar riffing than on their previous records is a hotly debated topic among fans on whether it is an improvement or not, and Mordecai is also a much softer and supple record than their prior LPs. The album still has a generally favorable critical reception, with many appreciative of the band's continued musical evolution, lyrical development, and the honing of their fusion of intercontinental influences. Their popularity grew to the point where they often sold out concerts, and vinyl collectors especially coveted the limiting pressings of their records. In fact, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Mordecai was one of the most wanted releases on Discogs. After the album's release, the band released a series of limited edition singles featuring remixes by several producers and artists. These singles were compiled on a 2021 full-length LP entitled Mordecai Remixes, and the overall outcome is a very nice accompaniment to the main album. I have the 2020 Vinyl Me Please release that was numbered and limited to 1,000 copies that was pressed on really beautiful pink and blue splash vinyl. This supposedly is the best release so far due to the other pressings tending to have quality control issues. It looks and just sounds amazing, so I really highly recommend the Vinyl Me Please pressing. I just recently got into this band, and they are very interesting in a dreamy, groovy, chill type of way. The band, in my opinion, is maybe a little overhyped by some, but you can't go wrong with this. There is some disagreement concerning this album regarding the increased use of vocals and having less guitar licks over their past albums, but I like it, and I love Laura's very funky bass lines. There is a very passionate debate about which of their three albums is the best, and the reason why this is slightly above the others is for two awesome songs. The disco-infused and super catchy Time You and I, with its almost hypnotic, repetitive melody, reflecting on the desire to build a future with someone if only there was more time, and the Latin-flavored Pelota, complete with flamenco hand claps and Spanish lyrics, arguably the two best songs that they have ever done. I also really like the songs First Class, the very groovy hypnotic ballad If There Is No Question, and the album closer Sheeta. I give this a personal grade of 7.5. This is unfortunately Khruangbin's only album on the list, but definitely check out the rest of their catalog if you like this, especially their second album Con Todo El Mundo, which barely missed the cut for this list. I also think that they have better music to come, for sure. Diabolical Records is a record store in Salt Lake City's Edison Street that was founded in 2013. They seem to cater to trying to bring more experimental music to the mainstream Salt Lake City area, and I totally enjoyed my visit. The pricing seemed to be above average. I did not really see any overpriced used vinyl, and their new vinyls seem to be consistently priced with other record stores in the area. I found a decent amount of new releases. I really think most people would find something that appeals to them here. The used selection was not as prevalent as the newer releases, but they still had a good selection. For example, I found the Kiss album Rock and Roll All Over with the Blue Tear misprint in perfect condition for $20. The store is very open and not cramped at all like a lot of other record stores tend to be, and I really appreciated that. It was also very organized and easy to follow, and the guy working, I think it was the owner Adam, he was very super friendly. He was really playing very diverse psychedelic and experimental underground music from artists like the Golden Dawn, so the guy must know a lot about music. The atmosphere is a little basic, but there's some custom artwork done throughout on columns, record bins, etc. that look really cool actually. The store also features local bands regularly. In fact, that is one of the biggest reasons why the store was founded to begin with. They sell other things like tapes. I really recommend Diabolical Records if you're in the area. Another store in Salt Lake, Raunch Records, is an interesting record store dominated by punk music that's located in Salt Lake City's Sugar House area. It originally opened in 1984 by owner Brad Collins and was featured in the 1998 movie Salt Lake City Punk. A year prior, the store actually closed and later reopened in the Sugar House location in 2009, and this is the location that I visited. It definitely has more of an underground underground skateboarder punk vibe, which is really cool as it stands out proudly against the conservative and Mormon values common in Salt Lake City. The store features a wide assortment of punk and underground metal. There is some more mainstream music also present in small quantities under very humorous listings like "Your Mom Would Like This." While I was at the store, another customer got a spam call from one of those places trying to sell car insurance over the phone. In true punk rock form, she told the person on the other end proudly to F off and hung up. Perfect. Their pricing is decent. I did not see any deals, and their selection is a little bit smaller than most other record stores. However, I've seen records here that I have never seen anywhere else. Also, if you're in the market for punk music, this is definitely the place to go. They have a ton of it. Most of everything was stored in an easy-to-use alphabetical order with a few subcategories. You're really forced to look through everything, but it really doesn't take too long, however. The people running the place were nice, but it's also to be expected, I assumed, for them to be a little flippant when you work at a place like this. This may not be everybody's cup of tea, but I was really appreciative of the decor inside and out. The store also sells things, obviously, like skateboards, posters, apparel, stickers, and patches. It's a really good place overall, again, if you're into the punker lifestyle. Check out Raunch Records if you're looking for something different than the mainstream or you're really into punk music. Merry Christmas is the fourth studio album by American singer-songwriter Mariah Carey and was her first Christmas album. Released by Columbia Records in 1994, at the peak of the initial stretch of Carey's music career, this album features cover versions of popular Christmas songs in addition to some original material. Carey worked with Walter Afanasieff, with whom she wrote all of the original tracks, as well as producing Carey's interpretations of the covered material. Re-released on multiple occasions in various formats since its debut, the album has sold 15 million copies worldwide, becoming one of the most best-selling holiday albums of all time, and it has reached top 10 status in almost 20 countries. In 2021, the album was named by Billboard magazine as the third greatest holiday album of all time. Carey is one of the best-selling musical artists of all time, with over 220 million records sold worldwide. With her debut album, she was the first artist to have their first 5 singles reach the top of the US charts, and she also holds the record for the most Billboard Hot 100 #1 singles by a solo artist, a female songwriter, and a female producer. She was named one of Time magazine's annual 100 most influential artists and entertainers in the world, ranked second on VH1's list of the 100 greatest women in music, named the top charting female solo artist of all time in 2019 by Billboard magazine, and was inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2022. Carey has won 5 Grammy Awards, 19 World Music Awards, 10 American Music Awards, 15 Billboard Music Awards, and holds 8 Guinness World Records. She is credited for inspiring multiple generations of pop and R&B artists and for merging urban hip-hop with pop music. After the success of Carey's previous 1993 album Music Box, expectations were high for her follow-up. Announced only 1 month before the album's release, critics were initially shocked at the announcement, in that Christmas albums were not popular with mainstream artists at the time and were usually done when an artist's career was on the decline. Carey had to be persuaded to do the album by her then husband Mottola, but once convinced, she felt the album was a way to portray her spirituality as well as to be able to experiment with her music and image. The idea proved to be wise, earning Carey recognition in various markets other than pop, including Christian radio and contemporary R&B stations. Recording was primarily done over the spring and summer of 1994, with Carey decorating her home with Christmas decorations so she could enter the holiday spirit and make her performances more authentic. Merry Christmas boasted a variety of musical arrangements, sounds, and genres, mixing pop songs with R&B flavors and gospel material, and had a balance of new material with more traditional Christmas standards. Critical response to the album's contemporary Christian theme was very mixed. Some music critics complimented the gospel and soul-inflected vocals, even calling it Carey's best record to date, but others dismissed it and was harshly critical of Carey's tendency to oversing her vocals, as well as calling it a cash grab. Most, however, noted that it was very clear that Carey genuinely loved the material and Christmas in general and was having a lot of fun in the process. Upon release, the album was heavily promoted by Columbia Records, with 3 singles released. The first one, All I Want for Christmas Is You, an up-tempo love song that includes bell chimes, synthesizers, and Beach Boys-style harmonies, was written and composed in a total of 15 minutes, clearly inspired by Phil Spector-style 1960s Christmas songs. Lyrically, the song focuses on what is most important at Christmas time, personal relationships and being with family, as opposed to common materialistic desires. The song became Carey's biggest international hit ever, going on to become one of the best-selling singles and phone ringtones of all time, and achieved universal critical acclaim. The song instantly became a holiday classic and has achieved many awards and accolades, including selling over 16 million copies worldwide, and continues to surge in popularity each holiday season. Upon initial release, All I Want for Christmas Is You was not eligible for inclusion on the Billboard Hot 100 chart, since the song was not released on a physical format. This requirement changed in 1998, so due to a huge promotional push years later in 2019, the song topped the US Billboard Hot 100 for the first time, 25 years after its original release, thereby breaking several records, including the longest trip to number 1. It was only the second time in the over 6-decade Hot 100 history a Christmas song hit number 1 on the main chart, and the first to do so since the Chipmunk song in 1958. The following year, it also topped the charts in the United Kingdom for the first time, spending a record 69 weeks in its top 40 prior to reaching number 1. The song also incredibly topped the US Billboard chart again in 2020, 2021, and in 2022, and its dominance every holiday season is just simply amazing and reflects its timeless quality. In 2021, it was ranked as the number 1 greatest holiday song of all time by Billboard. Popularity of the song is noteworthy, not merely in its staying power or its momentum year after year, but in its ability to command the category over a period in which the music industry and the culture has evolved significantly over time. With an estimated sales of over 14 million copies worldwide, All I Want for Christmas Is You is the first and only holiday song to be certified diamond, making Carey the second female artist in history to have both a diamond certified single and album, following Taylor Swift. Also, Carey became the 3rd artist and first woman with 3 songs that were on the top of the US Billboard chart for double-digit weeks. Boyz II Men and Drake are the only other 2 acts to have achieved such an accomplishment. 4 music videos were commissioned for the song. The initial video features grainy, home movie-style footage using Super 8 film, Carey with then-husband Tommy Mottola making a cameo as Santa Claus. The second video was filmed in black and white, featuring Carey dressed in a 1960s style with go-go dancers in homage to the Ronettes. Third music video was released in 2019 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of the song and featured unreleased footage of the first video. The last video, again celebrating the 25th anniversary, used newly shot video and featured celebrities that include Ryan Reynolds, Kim Kardashian, and James Corden. Second single, Miss You Most at Christmas Time, another one of the album's original tracks, was a ballad in line with many of Carey's previous hit singles featuring a synthesized orchestra. This was followed by the last single, a cover of the Christmas standard Joy to the World, which was remixed several times and sent to various clubs, adding to the album's range of listeners. The song Jesus Born on This Day, another original, is a gospel song whose arrangement made it more in line with a pop song and less overtly religious. The song again features a synthesized orchestra as well as a live children's choir, and Carey really uses her voice to full effect.
Celebrate the beginning of the Christmas season and to perform her all-time number 1 hit song, All I Want for Christmas Is You. Here she is, the Queen of Christmas, Mariah Carey.
For practically every holiday season since the album release, Carey has heavily promoted the album through recording remixes, live television specials, talk show appearances, releasing a children's book, performing at a concert residency at New York's Beacon Theater, and even doing promotional events like appearing on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade and voicing an animated special using her CGI likeness. All of this has continued to help to make the album an ongoing musical success, and the album has been extremely profitable for Carrie.
Can we do this in the house? I mean, all you have to do is call this winner. Call the winner.
Come, I'm gonna call the winner. Okay?
Snow everywhere.
Come on, snowboarding. We can go tobogganing, anything. Come on, sleigh riding, white Christmas. Come on, jingle bells.
Proceeds from the All I Want for Christmas Is You single alone have reportedly earned $60 million in royalties so far for the singer, making on average an estimated $2.5 million every single year. For the enduring popularity of her holiday music, Carrie has also been dubbed the Queen of Christmas as well as Princess Christmas. In 2021 and 2022, Carrie sought to make these titles official by filing a petition to trademark them so that only she alone could use the titles for branding for a wide range of products. Everything from fragrances, makeup, clothing, jewelry, and dog accessories. This effort proved controversial, as at least 2 other artists known for their holiday songs took issue with Carrie laying claim to the throne, Darlene Love and Elizabeth Chan. Chan filed a motion in opposition to Carrie's trademark request, and the Trademark Commission ultimately rejected Carrie's application. I have the 2020 Target exclusive that has a very Christmas-like red and green splatter on clear vinyl, and it sounds pretty good. For such a popular album, there really aren't too many vinyl pressings, less than 10 at the moment, but you should still be able to get this fairly easily. There are other color combinations, and interestingly, there was not an original 1994 US pressing. There was one done in the United Kingdom, but that is fairly expensive to acquire. Also note that the album pressings are notoriously bad for having skipping issues, but mine played without any problems. Since it is Christmas time, I will show a couple of other popular holiday albums that I have. The first is the soundtrack to Home Alone 2, which is called Home Alone Christmas, and I have the Walmart exclusive on red transparent vinyl. I love watching the first 2 Home Alone movies every year, and the soundtrack is great, with Darlene Love, Tom Petty, TLC, and highlights of the John Williams score. Another one is the compilation called A Very Special Christmas, which has collected millions of dollars for the Special Olympics. This is a fantastic holiday musical collection with songs by many superstar artists including Whitney Houston, Bruce Springsteen, U2, Madonna, and Bon Jovi, among others. I am sure if you work in the retail business, you probably groaned at this album's inclusion, but it definitely belongs on Vinylology. There are not many holiday-themed Christmas albums on the list, but this release is honestly good from beginning to end, and there is a high level of spirituality throughout. My favorite songs are the 3 originals, All I Want for Christmas Is You, Miss You Most at Christmas Time, and Jesus Born on This Day, as well as Christmas Please Come Home, and the dance club gospel-tinged song Joy to the World with its 3 Dog Night injection. I give this a 7.5. Now and Zen is a 4th solo album by English singer and songwriter Robert Plant, released on Plant's own record label. With a clear pun as its title, suggesting looking forward and backward at the same time, the release marked a modern return of sorts for the legendary singer, as he embraced more fully his past with his previous group Led Zeppelin. Plant was the lead singer and lyricist for the group for all of its existence from 1968 until 1980, when the band broke up following the death of John Bonham, the band's drummer. Plant developed a compelling image as a charismatic rock and roll frontman, similar to contemporaries such as Mick Jagger of the Rolling Stones, Roger Daltrey of The Who, Jim Morrison of The Doors, and Freddie Mercury of Queen. After Led Zeppelin dissolved in 1980, Plant continued to perform and record continuously on a variety of solo and group projects, including the short-lived groups The Honey Drippers and Page Plant, playing again with former Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page, among others. He also had successful albums with bluegrass artist Alison Krauss in 2009 and 10 years later. Plant is often put at the top of lists ranking hard rock and heavy metal singers of all time. After the conclusion of Led Zeppelin, Plant took a drastically new direction with his music, embracing a more computerized sound that lacked lead guitars and had a heavy prominence of synthesizers. He almost seemed embarrassed about his prior work and wanted to only focus on his new direction and looking ahead. With his first 3 albums, Plant had a great deal of success and had hit songs along the way like Big Log, little by little and in the mood. However, the musical climate in the late 1980s was at a fever pitch for anything closely related to the mystique of Led Zeppelin. Many bands are copying the band's blueprint of hard, bluesy, guitar-driven rock, and bands like Kingdom Come have vocalists that sounded so close to Led Zeppelin that Plant himself even called this particular band Kingdom Clone. Even though there were occasional teases, like with the brief Led Zeppelin reunion at Live Aid, Plant was stubbornly trying to still forget his past and avoided playing any Led Zeppelin songs at his own concerts. This all changed when Plant heard a demo tape from a band called The Rest Is History. One song in particular, the synth-heavy song Heaven Knows, influenced by the Led Zeppelin song Kashmir, piqued Plant's interest. Plant met the primary songwriter, an unknown keyboardist named Phil Johnstone, and the pair hit it off, deciding to write and record more songs together. After years of trying to separate himself from his legendary status of Led Zeppelin's frontman, and inspired by his new songwriting partner, and perhaps also driven by the wave of Zeppelin imitators enjoying the fruits of his labor at the time, Plant finally began to reopen the door to his past. They wrote and recorded the album Now and Then, which had more of the sound that had previously defined him in Led Zeppelin, with many of the band members that were in Johnstone's band The Rest Is History. Although Plant continued to utilize computerized audio technology in a similar fashion to his previous solo albums, with the keyboards being mixed at or above the guitar in most tracks, for this album Plant integrated the sounds of blues, doo-wop, and Middle Eastern tones. Plant also began performing Led Zeppelin songs again at his solo concerts in support of the album. The album spawned 3 singles, Heaven Knows and Tall Cool One, both featuring Led Zeppelin guitarist Jimmy Page, as well as the 3rd single and lovely ballad Ship of Fools. Page, whose participation in the liner notes was designated with a Zozo symbol, performed his solos at no cost in a single day, and to return the favor, Robert Plant sang vocals on Jimmy Page's solo album Outrider on the song The Only One. Now and Then sold very well, making the top 10 in the US and UK, and it was certified triple platinum in the United States. Tall Cool One, taking its title from a 1959 Wailers instrumental, its beat from a 1962 Routers hit, and its riff from the Yardbirds cover of the classic The Train Kept A-Rolling, but with a more electronic computer feel, had the super catchy chorus Lighten Up Baby I'm in Love With You, and a sort of cheesy rap chorus from Johnston. In response to the Beastie Boys' unauthorized sampling of some Led Zeppelin songs on their 1986 album Licensed to Ill, Plant himself also used Led Zeppelin samples on Tall Cool One to amazing effect, specifically the songs Whole Lotta Love, Dazed and Confused, Black Dog, Custard Pie, and The Ocean, as well as lyrical phrases from Black Dog and When the Levee Breaks. As fans and the press were all worked up in a lather at the promise of Plant's return to form and knowing of Page's involvement, as limited as it was, the album was released with an expansive promotional push, with music videos, remix singles, and all types of memorabilia made available. In fact, in what is a classic case of selling out, Plant appeared in a televised Coca-Cola commercial using an edited version of his Tall Cool One video. The cover featured 4 symbols that closely resembled Led Zeppelin 4's runes, and also had a wolf motif, which was a tribute to his favorite association football team, the Wolverhampton Wanderers, called the Wolves by their fans. Now and Then was received positively by both Plant's fans and music critics, noting its seamless pop fusion of hard guitar rock, computerization, and songcraft, bound together by one of the greatest voices in rock music. However, Plant himself has acknowledged in recent interviews that the songs got lost in experimental technology of the time. Tony Halliday, the lead singer of the band Curve, provided background vocals, as well as Christine McCall, who was a friend of Johnstone who had helped her with her debut album Desperate Character. Wife of legendary producer Steve Lillywhite, McCall had recorded some pop hits in the 1980s and 1990s until her untimely death in the year 2000 by a motorboat while vacationing in Mexico. She had saved one of her son's lives by pushing him out of the way, and she died instantly as the boat ran into her. Johnstone himself also died in 2021 at the age of 63 after a few years of bad health. Fun fact, during recording for the album, bass player Charlie Jones met Plant's daughter Carmen Plant, and they married shortly thereafter in 1991. Carmen was referenced in the Led Zeppelin song The Ocean with the following lyrics. I have the Specialty Records 1988 original press. This isn't too hard to acquire. There were lots of 1988 pressings, and I got mine for about $10. The album has never been reissued ever since, however. I also have one of the original US CD versions that I bought upon release, and it has a bonus track called Walking Towards Paradise, which is not aged at all very well, so you aren't missing anything. When I bought this, it came in a long black box and was packaged with a red satin wolf mini flag, which is supposedly rare. This album, great at its time, does sound dated with 80s production, particularly the synthesized drums, but it still holds up to a point. The best songs are lead track Heaven Knows, the soothing acoustic ballad Ship of Fools, Billy's Revenge, and White Clean and Neat, both influenced by 1950s pop, and the great smoking balls to the wall but dated Tall Cool One. I always have enjoyed most of the music, so I personally give this a 7.5. Obviously check this out if you're a fan of Led Zeppelin, but you need to be a little bit open-minded to be able to enjoy this, I would suspect. Thanks for watching this episode. I hope you're enjoying these, and also hope you're having a great holiday season and a happy new year. See you next time. Ah, the 80s.